Trip-hop is a genre of electronic music that originated in the early 1990s in the United Kingdom, especially Bristol. Deriving from post-acid house, the term was first used by the British music media and press as a way to describe the more experimental variant of breakbeat which contained influences of soul, funk and jazz. It has been described as Europe's alternative choice in the second half of the 90s, and a fusion of hip-hop and electronica until neither genre is recognizable. Trip-hop music fuses several styles and has much in common with other genres. It has several qualities similar to ambient music, and its drum-based breakdowns share characteristics with hip-hop. It also contains elements of R&B, dub and house, as well as other electronic music. Trip-hop can be highly experimental in nature. History: 1990s, trip-hop originated in and around the city of Bristol during a time when American hip-hop, dance and house music had begun to increase in popularity. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the term trip-hop was coined in 1989, though its earliest use in print was in June 1994. Andy Pemberton, a music journalist writing for Mixmag, used it to describe Mo Wax Records artist PM and DJ Shadow's Influx single. In Bristol, once one of the most important ports in the Atlantic slave trade and as of 2012 among Britain's most racially diverse cities, hip-hop began to seep into the consciousness of a subculture already well-schooled in Jamaican forms of music. DJs, MCs, b-boys and graffiti artists grouped together into informal sound systems. Like the pioneering Bronx crews of DJs Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa and Grandmaster Flash, the sound systems provided party music for public spaces, often in the economically deprived council estates from which some of their members originated. Bristol's sound system DJs, drawing heavily on Jamaican dub music, typically used a laid-back, slow and heavy drum beat. Bristol's Wild Bunch crew was one of the sound systems to put a local spin on the international phenomenon, helping to birth Bristol's signature sound of trip-hop. The Wild Bunch and its associates included at various times in its existence the MC Adrian Tricky Kid Thors, the graffiti artist and lyricist Robert 3D Dellinger, producer Johnny Dollar and the DJs Nelly Hooper, Andrew Mushroom Valls and Grant Daddy G. Marshall. As the hip-hop scene matured in Bristol and musical trends evolved further toward acid jazz and house in the late 80s, the golden era of the sound system was ending. The Wild Bunch signed a record deal and evolved into Massive Attack, a core collective of 3D, Mushroom and Daddy G, with significant contributions from Tricky Kid Dollar and Hooper on production duties, along with a rotating cast of other vocalists. Another influence was Gary Clayle's Tackhead sound system. Clayle often worked with former The Pop group singer Mark Stewart. The latter experimented with his band Mark Stewart and the Mafia, which consisted of New York session musicians Skip McDonald, Doug Wimmish, and Keith LeBlanc, who had been a part of the house band for the Sugile Records record label. Produced by Adrian Sherwood, the music combined hip-hop with experimental rock and dub and sounded like a premature version of what later became trip-hop. In 1993, Kirsty MacColl released Angel, one of the first examples of the genre being crossed over to pop, a hybrid which dominated the charts toward the end of the decade. Early to mid-1990s, trip-hop's mainstream breakthrough. Massive Attack's first album Blue Lines was released in 1991 to huge success in the UK. Blue Lines was seen widely as the first major manifestation of a uniquely British hip-hop movement, but the album's hit single Unfinished Sympathy, and several other tracks, while their rhythms were largely sample-based, were not seen as hip-hop songs in any conventional sense. Produced by Dollar, Sharon Nelson featured on the orchestral Unfinished, and Jamaican dance hall star Horace Andy provided vocals on several other tracks, as he would throughout Massive Attack's career. Massive Attack released their second album entitled Protection in 1994. Although Tricky stayed on in a lesser role, and Hooper again produced, the fertile dance music scene of the early 90s had informed the record, and it was seen as an even more significant shift away from the Wild Bunch era. The term trip-hop was coined that year, but not in reference to anything on the Massive Attack albums. In the June 1994 issue of UK magazine Mixmag, Music journalist Andy Pemberton used it to describe the hip-hop instrumental in Flux, a 1993 single by San Francisco's DJ Shadow, and other similar tracks released on the Mo Wax label and being played in London clubs at the time. In Flux, with its mixed-up BPMs, spoken word samples, strings, melodies, bizarre noises, prominent bass, and slow beats, gave the listener the impression they were on a musical trip, according to Pemberton. Soon, however, Massive Attack's dubby, jazzy, psychedelic, electronic textures, rooted in hip-hop sampling technique but taking flight into many styles, were described by journalists as the template of the eponymous genre. 1994 and 1995 saw trip-hop near the peak of its popularity, with artists such as Howie B., Naked Funk and Earthling making significant contributions. Those years also marked the rise of London band Red Snapper. Ninja Tune, the independent record label founded by the Cold Cut duo, would significantly influence the trip-hop sound in London and beyond with breakthrough artists DJ Food, Nine Lazy Nine, Up, Bustle and Out, Funky Pacini and The Herbalizer, among others. The period also marked the debut of Two Acts who, along with Massive Attack, would define the Bristol scene for years to come. In 1994 Portishead released their debut album, Dummy. A trio fronted by singer Beth Gibbons, Portishead also included sonic manipulators Jeff Barrow and Adrian Utley. Their background differed from Massive Attack in many ways. One of Portishead's primary influences was 1960s and 70s film soundtrack LPs. Nevertheless, Portishead shared the scratchy, jazz sample-based aesthetic of early Massive Attack, and the sullen, fragile vocals of Gibbons also brought them wide acclaim. In 1995, Dummy was awarded the Mercury Music Prize as the Best British Album of the Year, giving trip-hop as a genre its greatest exposure yet. Portishead's music, seen as cutting-edge in its film noir feel and stylish, yet emotional appropriations of past sounds, was also widely imitated, causing the band to recoil from the trip-hop label they had inadvertently helped popularize. Tricky also released his debut solo album, Maxinque, in 1995, to great critical acclaim. Tricky employed whispered, often abstract stream of consciousness murmuring, remote from the gangster rap braggadocio of the mid-90s US hip-hop scene. Even more unusually, however, many of the solo songs on Maxinque featured little of Tricky's own voice. His then-lover, Martina Topley-Bird, sang them, including her reimagining of Public Enemy's militant 1988 rap Black Steel and The Hour of Chaos, while other songs were male-female duets dealing with sex and love in oblique ways, over beds of sometimes dissonant samples. Within a year Tricky had released two more full-length albums which were considered even more challenging, without finding the same popularity as his Bristol contemporaries Massive Attack and Portishead. Through his brief collaborations with Paragraph RK, however, he also exerted influence closer to the pop and alternative rock mainstream, and he developed a large cult fan base. Musician Poe released her 1995 debut Hello, an album that featured trip-hop elements, to critical praise. The London-based band Archive began as trip-hop, before developing into progressive rock, employing elements of both hip-hop and orchestral music with the album controlling crowds. Although not as popular in the United States, bands like Portishead and Sneaker Pimp saw moderate airplay on alternative rock stations across the country. Post-trip-hop. After the initial success of trip-hop in the mid-1990s, a new generation of trip-hop artists emerged with a more standardized sound. Notable post-trip-hop artists include East Thero, Morcheeba, Sneaker Pimps, Anami Bell, Alpha, Jayunto, Mutville and Sibo Matto and Lamb. These artists incorporated trip-hop into other genres, including ambient, soul, IDM, industrial, dubstep, breakbeat, drum and bass, acid jazz, and new age. The first printed use of the term post-trip-hop was in an October 2002 article of The Independent, and was used to describe the band Second Person. Trip-hop has also influenced artists in other genres, including Gorillaz, Emancipator, Nine Inch Nails, Travis, All Flaws, How to Destroy Angels, Beth Orton, The Flaming Lips, Bitter, Sweet, Beck, Deftones, Paragraph RK. Several tracks on Australian pop singer Kylie Minogue's 1997 album Impossible Princess also suggested a trip-hop influence. Various prominent artists and groups, such as Janet Jackson, Kylie Minogue, Madonna, Paragraph RK, and Radiohead, have also been influenced by the genre. Trip-hop has spawned several subgenres, including ambient. Trip-hop in the 2000s. Trip-hop continued to influence notable artists in the 2000s. Atmospheric rock band Antimatter included some trip-hop elements in their first two albums. RJD began his career as a DJ, but in 2001, began releasing albums under LP's Def Jux label. 07's album Simple Things, and in particular, its lead single Destiny, was regarded highly by underground listeners and achieved significant popularity. In 2006, Gotye debuted his first album Like Drawing Blood. The songs on the album featured down-tempo hip-hop beats and dub-style bass reminiscent of trip-hop. Hip-hop group Zion I and the Dub Pistols also displayed heavy trip-hop influence. Norwegian singer and songwriter, Kate Havnevik, is a classically trained musician, but also incorporates trip-hop into her work. Producers. Many producers who were not explicitly trip-hop artists also displayed its influence during the early 2000s. Daniel Nakamura, also known as Dan the Automator, released two albums that were heavily inspired by trip-hop. 2000 album Deltron 3030, was a concept album about a rapper, portrayed by Del the Funky Homosapian, from the future. 2001 saw the release of his side project, Lovage. Music to Make Love to Your Old Lady by, with special guests Mike Patton, Prince Paul, Mazio, Damon Albarn, and Africa Bambaataa. British producer Fatboy Slim's breakthrough album, Halfway Between the Gutter and the Stars, was his most commercially successful release. Trip-hop in the 2010s, major notable releases include Massive Attack's Heligoland and Dutch's A Bright Cold Day in 2010. How to Destroy Angels released a self-titled EP in 2010, and a full album Welcome Oblivion in 2013. DJ Shadow's The Less You Know, The Better was released in 2011. Jeff Barrows was released in 2012. Lana Del Rey released her second album, Born to Die in 2012, which contained a string of trip-hop ballads, topped the charts in 11 countries, including Australia, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, and has sold 3.4 million copies worldwide as of 2013 according to International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. Tricky released his 10th studio album False Idols on May 23, 2013. British trip-hop trio London Grammar released their debut album If You Wait on September 9, 2013 and set platinum certification by BPI. Singer FKA Twigs, often cited as a trip-hop musician, was nominated for BBC's Sound of 2014 prize and chosen by Spotify for their Spotlight on 2014 list. Musical elements. Common musical aesthetics include a bass-heavy drum beat, often emulating the slowed breakbeat samples typical of hip-hop in the 1990s. Vocals in trip-hop are often female and feature characteristics of various singing styles including R&B, jazz and rock. The female-dominant vocals of trip-hop may be partially attributable to the influence of genres such as jazz and early R&B in which female vocalists were more common. However, there are notable exceptions. Massive Attack has collaborated with male and female singers. Tricky often features vocally in his own productions and Chris Corner provided vocals for late albums with his group Sneaker Pimps. Trip-hop is also known for its melancholy. This may be partly due to the fact that several acts were inspired by post-punk bands. Tricky and Massive Attack both covered and sampled songs of Siouxsie and the Banshees and The Cure. Tricky opened his second album Nearly God by a version of Tattoo, a pre-trip-hop song of Siouxsie and the Banshees. Trip-hop tracks often sample Rhodes pianos, saxophones, trumpets, and flutes. Trip-hop differs from hip-hop in theme and overall tone. Instead of gangster rap with its hard-hitting lyrics, trip-hop offers a more oral atmospherics with instrumental hip-hop, turntables scratching, and breakbeat rhythms. Regarded in some ways as a 90s update of fusion, Trip-hop may be said to transcend the hardcore rap styles and lyrics with atmospheric overtones to create a more mellow tempo. See also, chill-out music, list of electronic music genres, references. External links, Trip-hop Radio Internet Radio, Trip-hop Allmusic Guide essay by Sean Cooper, World of Trip-hop webpage, Triptica, an internet radio dedicated to trip-hop, NPR's History of Trip-hop.